Right, welcome back. Hi, everyone. I get to choose today's topic. And today's topic, I'm going to talk about procurement outsourcing, but actually the lessons that I've learned in having done it, both advising people to do it, but also having done it, building a team by outsourcing it right from scratch. It applies to any kind of outsourcing. So whether you're outsourcing finance, shared services, call centers, it doesn't really matter. I think the same principles apply. And what I was just really keen to do was have a discussion, because this topic came up with a colleague this week, and I just thought it would be useful to have a chat. So although I'm going to talk about procurement, you could delete procurement and you could go and put in any function. It's the same kind of thing.
Okay, great. So it'd be good to hear from your experience. So Richard, can you start by telling us why a company might consider outsourcing its procurement function to start with?
Right, I'll give you if you go to the sort of textbook answers, it's about reducing cost. It's about accessing someone else's expertise. It's about leveraging scale. So for example, in procurement function, we talked about this when we were talking about leveraging, scaling the function. If I've got a certain amount of spend and I'm buying furniture, if I go to an outsourcer who is also buying furniture for 100 other clients, I benefit from the fact they're negotiating deals on a scale of purchase that combines all of their clients. It might be that I am outsourcing because I want access to technology, or I want to change a legal jurisdiction. I might want to move it into a more tax efficient environment. And there are companies who've set up captive and outsourced procurement teams that are put in, low tax jurisdictions around the world. So there's a ton of things which are, all the good reasons why you do it. But then actually, and this has happened to me, I've outsourced because I didn't have a team and I had to build a procurement team quickly. So we outsourced to effectively buy the capability because the organization didn't have the capability. So I think that's, also an important reason, which is, you look at the market and you just think, right, rather than try and build organically, I can scale quicker if I simply access someone who does this as a service.
Might be particularly useful in an M&A environment where you haven't sort of maybe purchased a company from a group of companies, but you haven't had the procurement or finance or whatever function tooped over to you. Yeah,
I agree.
Okay, so that makes sense. So how should a company go about choosing the right outsourcing partner, other than sort of trying to find reviews and references?
Okay, we're not going to knock reviews and references because they matter a lot. If I look at the procurement space, I could go and type into Google, or I could go to ChatGPT, in fact, and I could say, right, go and tell me, the top 10 list of outsourcers, or I could go to a consultant who would give me an up-to-date summary of the outsourcers, or I could simply go and buy market intelligence. The thing is, it's like any relationship. It's about whether you think you're going to get on. And different outsourcers operate at different scale. There are outsourcers who are brilliant at looking at, FTSE 100, FTSE 250 companies. That's what they're designed to do. They're not going to do procurement outsourcing for a SME because your scale isn't big enough. There's just nothing of economic value in that relationship for them. But there are other individuals who would do the outsourcing of procurement for you. So it's about almost a dating site, I suppose, where you've got to find the match in terms of an outsourcer that is experienced in your industry, unless you're just doing indirects, in which case it's industry agnostic, that they have the experience of working with an organization of your size, and genuinely, when you sit down with them, and I'll talk about why this is important in a minute, you say, actually, yes, I could work with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the bit that's missing, but I'll save that.
I suppose that's a bit similar to consultancy, because often the big four, for example, they won't really pursue an opportunity to work with a client unless it's sort of 1 million plus opportunity.
Exactly.
So if you're an SME and you want some help, I don't know, let's say selecting an ERP system, and that opportunity was more like, I don't know, 250k or something like that. They probably wouldn't try to help you.
No. Tricky.
Yes. So basically it's choosing the right partner, and that's as much with outsourcing procurement as it is with consultancy.
Absolutely, it is. Yep.
Okay. So interesting point. So what are some of the common mistakes companies make when outsourcing their procurement, and how can these be avoided?
I would, and this is why I wanted to save this point about, do you get on, right? So if you think about outsourcing, one of the things that I think is a mistake is the mindset that says I am taking something that I do and I'm giving it to someone else, and it's like passing the rugby ball. It isn't. The mindset that I think that works is I am simply having my function, but they're employed by someone else. They've still got to feel like they're part of your team. And if in procurement, it feels like you're throwing the ball to some team that you've got no clue about, that are sat somewhere in the world, that are just doing a purchase operations center, and you don't know them and they don't feel like they're part of your team, it will never work. Never work. The second thing is how it fits in according to what you're doing. So if you think about, the end-to-end procurement process, right? There is everything from developing a category strategy for, what we need, what the business needs, and how we're going to do it. And there is then the creation of the relationship through some kind of tender and contracting or engagement process. And once that's all in place, there's a procure to pay process by which whatever the product or services that you found, there's a process by which someone asks for it, you order it, you get it, you pay for it. Fine. Now, if you think about just those three bits, they are completely different levels of outsourcing and capability, and they're completely different in terms of their touch points in your organization. So let me illustrate. If you're outsourcing a purchase operations center, so you just want a third party who, when a requester says, I want you to buy a laptop, they're going to deal with all of the transactional stuff that goes with ordering it, getting it, confirming receipt, and coordinating with your accounts payable. Shouldn't feel much different to ordering on Amazon, right? So there's a low emotional involvement. If I am getting the next level up, which is, my in-house team are going to do all the thinking about the categories. They're going to have the relationships with my stakeholders. So they're then going to turn around and say, right, I want us to go to the market to get this range of IT equipment. And they hand that to their outsourced partner, who's going to go and run the RFP, the supplier selection, get the contracts in place, and then run the operation center. That's a different level altogether, because now you've got not just people using a service like Amazon, you've got your finance team, legal team, quality team, all of whom have got an interest in what that outsourcer is doing in terms of finding the right supplier and having the right commercial agreement contract. At the top level, and I've done this once, is if you say, actually, no, I want to outsource my procurement function. So I'm just going to keep a very small leadership team, but I'm going to buy category management, the sourcing and contracting, and the purchase operations center. Now you've gone to the kind of the red alert level, because you're outsourcing to people who are going to have day-to-day contact with senior stakeholders in your organization. So this isn't just going to market and saying, right, thanks for the spec, I'll now go and find the suppliers and get the contract in place. The people you're outsourcing to are going to be talking to the stakeholders in your business. So if you think about the three levels for a laptop, easy level like Amazon, you've decided what you're going to buy, you've got the commercial arrangements in place, someone wants a laptop, they ping off, to whatever system you're using, and your outsourcer goes and gets your laptop and gets it delivered. Easy. I've decided what laptop, but I now want you to find the suppliers and put the contract in place that we can then order. Much more complicated, lots of different departments in the business. I want you to go and at the top level, right, Mr. Outsourcing Category Manager, I want you to go and engage with the CIO and their team, agree the requirement, agree the process, then go and source it and contract it and put in place the Purchase Operations Center. That's a completely different scale. And how you adjust that touch point, how engaged with stakeholders in the business, the depth of that outsourcing makes a huge difference to the way you have to bring it in. At the bottom end, frankly, just tell people this is how you order stuff. Top end, you've got to make sure that your senior stakeholders are comfortable operating with an outsourced partner who's going to be coming to them and saying, right, I want to sit down and chat to you about...
So the top end is all about strategic direction, isn't it?
Absolutely. And therefore, if it almost comes down to the, I forget whether it was Roosevelt or Churchill, someone said, look, if you want me to speak for 10 minutes, I need a week to prepare. If you want me to speak for 2 hours, I'll start now. It's the same kind of thing, which is if you want to outsource true embedded capability, that's a 6-month, 1 year run up just to make sure you're picking the right partner who's actually going to look and feel like they're part of your organization. If you're outsourcing the way they go and buy stuff, frankly, I could go and do that tomorrow with Amazon Business and no one would care. So for me, the biggest mistake is failing to assess, if you like, the emotional content of where that membrane between you and your outsourcer, because according to how high up it is, it's got a really different look and feel.
And whether you just want transactional support or whether you want strategic support.
That's it. And if it's strategic support, you're going to be picking a completely different partner than if you're going just to do bog standard transactional stuff. So that would be, for me, that's the biggest mistake, because you then, all the things we talked about in the silent killers of transformation, all of that applies. Plan, dedicated change management, leadership, executives, all of that is true. But the thing for me that matters most in an outsourcing deal is finding a partner that fits and feels like they're part of your organization, and making sure that you've made a really clear assessment about how you prepare people to work with the outsourcer, from transactional up to actually this is the same as me employing someone who's going to go and work. It's got to have the same thing.
One of the things that makes a difference, and I've seen it in finance shared service centres, is whether you have dedicated support to your business or whether you're just speaking to a team that's kind of rotating across all clients.
And the chances are it's the latter. And, of course, if you tell them that you want a dedicated team, get your checkbook out, because that's not what an outsourcer does. They operate at scale. I mean, an SME who employs, someone like me who's self-employed and says, look, could you be a fractional CPA? Okay, that's fine, because, I'm dedicated to you when I'm talking to you. But if you're talking about one of the big, big four outsourcing teams, you're not going to be talking to someone. You might have a dedicated account manager. You might have named people if you've got them at the strategy level. But if all you're doing is outsourcing transactional work in a purchase operations center, the whole point is that they're a shared team, and it's you're going to get potluck who you phone up. You're just relying on them being good. And to me, it's a great question, because if you don't understand that where you are on the scale between truly strategic and just doing transactional stuff, you won't get the right judgment call about how you prepare your organization and the people in it to interact with it. Because if it's transactional and it's a shared resource, and someone phones up and says, where's my laptop order, and they speak to a different person every time, as long as they've got access to the information on the screen and can give a good answer, who cares? But if I'm the CIO and I'm talking to someone to who I have outsourced strategic activity, I want to talk to the same person. And that's, again, culture and mindset about what you're outsourcing and how it's going to fit with the organization, your organization that your outsource is going to fit with, because they're you.
And I suppose at the top end where it's strategic, is when you talk about fit, is a lot of that is about culture of the company as well, isn't
absolutely,
it?
Yeah. And it's and by the way, it works both ways. You could be a highly corporate company that goes to a kind of mid-size, what I would call family-friendly kind of outsourcer that's much more kind of in the spirit of relationship and engagement. That wouldn't work. You could be a mid-sized, family-based organization that's grown, that hits a highly corporate Big Four outsourcer, and you say, God, this feels like talking to a machine.
Yeah.
And that doesn't fit. So again, it's like any relationship. It's you've got to know that it works for you, and then your culture and mindset. That's a really good point.
Yeah, because I've seen them. I worked, in the technology sector. You often see quite young companies that are quite work hard, play hard kind of culture.
Yeah.
But then if you go to, let's say, the legal sector, completely different culture.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Play harder. Look, so there we go.
Yeah.
Outsourcing is great. It's a really good way of leveraging benefits. It's a great way of leveraging scale. It's a great way of bringing in expertise that you don't have without you having to spend the time trying to grow it. But all the stuff about silent killers of transformation apply. If you haven't seen that coffee break, go watch it. But for me, that big thing about fit and understanding where you're connecting it to your organization in terms of strategy down to just transactional is so important.
Yes, and I think it made me think that we should do a coffee break on assessing company culture.
Good idea. We should.
Good one. Okay,
right.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Have a good one.